Hello, before we get into this maelstrom of fucking horrible noise, thank you to everybody that's already given us money so far on Patreon. We really appreciate that. If you have not yet done so, please go do that at patreon.com/unsongpod. We have a variety of different things for you which you can take away, including t-shirts and playlists and bonus content and all that.
Yeah, and also we were scraping around the edges of the top 50 in the iTunes music podcast charts, which was incredibly exciting.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So perhaps we can break that top 50 if we get a little push. If you fancy sharing this, spreading the good word, and if we can get through there, that'd be cool, because we noticed we actually started getting approached by people as soon as that happened. Started getting unsolicited emails from people wanting us to sell their pants. So more of that, please.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really big podcasts up in the top 200, never mind the top 50, so if you could stay in there, that'd be really nice, and then you can feel good about yourself, and then you'll feel great about yourself, and then everybody wins.
Yeah, and you will have been there from the start, so you'll be invited to all the backstage parties when we're selling.
You will always be one of us.
Hello. I knew you were going to do that. You always do that.
Sorry, it's just when we talk about the band that we're going to do, that's just how I feel.
That's just how they sound, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
For pretty, like, most of their discography sounds like that sound.
You say most, but I mean
all of it.
All of it.
Did anybody
over in less than 50 minutes?
Did anybody tally it?
The amount of endurance.
No, I mean
how long their entire discography is.
Their entire album discography
It's
has
an
got
hour
to be
and 2 minutes long.
It can't even be that long.
It's an hour and 2 minutes long. There's a Spotify playlist called Nails Discography, and it's an hour and 2 minutes long.
Really? Because the first album's 13 minutes 40 odd seconds.
And the second one's 17, and the third one's 21.
The third one's an epic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, no, that's their prog record. Yeah. But right, first up, hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay, ready to get heavy. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
I'm a little flushed.
Christopher, why?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just getting to that age.
Is that because you were listening to this in Tinderbox the other day?
I was listening to this in a cafe and alarming the people around me. Although it did mean they were free to say whatever they wanted about me, thinking I couldn't hear them except when the music stopped. There will be revenge.
Do you have any cultural highlights?
I watched Ad Astra. I don't know if you've seen it.
That's not very good.
I watched that as well.
I thought it was okay.
I thought it
wasn't
was
awful.
Do you know, it annoyed me because it should be way better than it is.
Yeah.
And I was like, I like how it looks. I like Brad Pitt. I like the fact that it's...
Do you like how Brad Pitt looks?
Yeah, obviously.
Who doesn't?
I like how quiet it is, because I like films that show and don't tell and blah, blah, blah. But it somehow is still shit. Like, somehow... Well, it wasn't shit. It pissed me off.
The thing that struck me the most about it, and I know what you're saying about they like the way it looks, and I liked it as well, but it's so Kubrick, it's just like mostly a rip-off of like his style in A Space Odyssey.
Well, Space Odyssey, and then it's Space Odyssey crossed with Apocalypse Now, pretty much.
Yeah.
And like, even I think the director said, it's like 2001 meets Apocalypse Now with a little bit of Conrad thrown in. And you're like, well, Apocalypse Now is Conrad, so
yeah,
you know,
exactly. Yeah.
you've doubled down on yourself
Maybe
there.
you didn't actually do your due diligence in that one.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of disappointing, that film. I wasn't really.
I was, because I saw the trailer like last year, and I thought that looks like it should be great. And then, yeah, it's one of the most disappointing films because I just didn't warm to it at all.
Yeah.
So, Mark, that no longer qualifies as a cultural highlight.
No,
you have to retract that statement.
I retract that statement.
David has overruled you.
Yeah, so I've had no cultural highlights in the past week then.
Just lowlights.
Just lowlights.
I had a real cultural highlight this time last week, in fact, on last Wednesday. I went to see Baby Metal.
Oh yeah,
at Barrowlands. Do you know what? They were fucking great. It's pop, but with a really fucking tight metal band in the back, and it's like cheesy. But do you know what? You won't get a more diverse crowd at any gig I've ever seen. It was like 14-year-old anime dorks, 25-year-old hipsters. There were
50-year-old perverts.
Yeah, 40-year-old metal dudes.
30-year-old perverts. 20-year-old perverts.
50-50 gender balance. It was guilt-free fun.
Pan-perversia.
It was really fun. Is your ankle okay? You're doing a weird hypnotic thing with your toe right there.
These are not the droids you're looking for.
Did you enjoy Creeper?
No, they were awful.
No, not your thing.
Well, we turned up. I'd kind of heard of them, and we all turned up, and my pal Craig just goes, "Oh, AFI are still here," except sounded worse. It was bad.
They're like, for me, they are the Jim. No, what's the guy? Jim Steinman. The Jim Steinman of like punk rock. They do this really huge, opulent, ostentatious punk stuff, but they're not. Their new record apparently isn't even like that anymore.
Well, so it didn't work as a support set because they didn't have good sound and people didn't really know who they were.
Was it the Barras, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's notorious that bands mix down their supports in the Barras.
Yeah. I've seen some very
thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I've seen some bad
supports.
supports.
It's absolutely standard. There's very few bands that don't do it. It's the exception to the rule is bands that don't insist on the support bands being mixed down. And I know various people who have toured as the engineers for the supports, and the engineer for the main band will stand next to them and pull the faders down if they try and go up above. It's usually like a 96 limit or something like that. So you simply don't get the quality of sound and the impact. It's so that when the main band hits the stage, they've got this immediate advantage of just sheer volume and power that the support band doesn't have. And it kind of comes from main bands being really quite insecure about their abilities. The bands that don't insist in it, I believe Queens of the Stone Age are one of the bands that don't insist in it, or at least didn't insist on it. I'm not really sure how many others now don't do it, but it's incredibly common, yeah. One of the guys I know, David, who did Tour and Sound, I can't remember who it was for, but they were on a big tour, and I remember him saying at the Barras he got like 10 minutes of proper volume when the engineer had to run to the toilet. And for the last 10 minutes of the support set, he was able to push it up to like a concert volume, and it sounded amazing. And the engineer came running out the toilet, demanding he turn it down, but then they were just finishing their set. So yeah.
So is that common in bigger tours then?
It's
or just
incredibly
across
common.
the board?
It's incredibly common on loads of tours, not just big tours, but sort of medium to large tours.
Yeah, and especially like sort of commercially backed ones that like of heavy bands. You know, Baby Metal have a huge marketing team behind them, so they're going to be like, we want this live experience to be as in your face as possible, and so we want to be louder than the other shit that's on and make more of a splash.
I've been knocking about for years and I didn't know that. That's mad.
That's one of the many grim realities that you encounter when you get behind the curtain of the music industry, man. Yeah,
that's pretty scary. Fuck.
Disillusioning.
Yeah, but we're all fucked.
It does also, though, and the inverse of that is that you get a new respect for the bands that go out their way to insist that that's not part of the contract for the support bands. And I wish I could give you more examples right now, but I can't off the top of my head. But there are bands out there who do not ask that because they're comfortable in and of themselves.
Well, I mean, off the top of my head, I remember when I saw Tool in the SEC and Mastodon supported. I don't think Mastodon were below volume. And they started with, you know, a 10-minute long instrumental that was loud as fuck. So I think they were just doing whatever they wanted, which was, fair play.
Yeah, definitely. It's not all, but I think it's...
But yeah, I think it is
more common than not now, yeah. Anyway, talking about bands incredibly loud bands.
Or bands that are maybe insecure.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, truly fragile.
Yeah, Nails. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So what are we doing?
So we're doing their first album, Unsilent Death.
Uh-huh.
Which you can pause the podcast right now and go listen to it and come back, and you really are not adding very much on your day.
Yeah, you could race the kettle to be boiled.
13 minutes 43, 52, something like that.
I think it's 15 minutes actually.
No, I don't think it's as long as that.
Yeah. That is a 13 minutes 52, yeah. I thought it was 15 minutes long for some reason.
Yeah, so my walk to work, my walk from work to here, I normally like just skip through the songs to get them back fresh in my head. But with this album, it actually finished just as I was coming through the door. So yeah, the 15-minute walk.
So this presents
exactly the same.
Before we even get into the nitty-gritty of it, this presents immediate questions, because I know at least one of you guys has seen them live, right?
We were both at the same show.
Both at the same show. And did they play for that amount of time?
I don't think.
But so it was.
I don't think they can.
This was a problematic set that they cut short. They cut short. They didn't just play for 20 minutes because that was their set list. They played for 20 minutes. Well, they played for about 18 minutes. Then he
had a tantrum.
So their singer guitarist Todd Jones, like leader of the band, he had a tantrum, picked up his guitar pedal, threw it into the crowd, tried to play one more song, and then he told people to fuck off and don't buy a t-shirt.
They said go buy a t-shirt.
Go buy a t-shirt.
Yeah, t-shirts are reduced to €5 or whatever your local currency is. They won't be playing Glasgow ever again, and that was it.
It never quite worked out. So did you have details of why it happened?
Well, for one thing, the thing that failed was like Nails after You'll Never Be One of Us came out. I think it was God City Instruments. It might have been, which is Kurt Ballew's pedal making factory attached to his recording studio. Made a pedal called the Tyrant, which is like a Boss HM2 clone, but made for Nails. It was one of them that broke. And he chugged it into the crowd, and then he played one song just with vocal, and he's like, no, that's shite, and fucked off. So apparently what had happened, right, I spoke to the promoter afterwards, and also spoke to the sound man, because the sound was also shocking.
Yeah, the sound was horrible.
I was raging because I just paid 25 quid.
Where was it?
It was in the Cat House. It was a £20 ticket as well.
I paid 25 quid in the door, and it was basically sold out, but I think it was almost, or pretty much was sold out in the door. So what happened is Todd booked the tour, so they were only playing here because we're doing a bunch of festivals. They done one in Leeds, and then they did a whole bunch in Europe, including Hellfest and all that. So he'd booked all the transport and all that, and the flights and stuff. He'd booked flights to London and thought they were playing in London. Got to London at 12 o'clock in the afternoon and had to drive up to Glasgow. So they didn't actually get into Glasgow until 8 o'clock, and they were on stage at 9. So they hadn't met the sound guy. The sound guy was some guy from England that they'd hired. So he beat them up there. He set up. They didn't have a chance to sound check. So clearly they must have been all totally frazzled and jet lagged to fuck, and he just completely fucked it. So yeah, that's the kind of context around why that show was so bad.
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of a DIY crust band that have broken through and are playing 500 cap venues that should, any other band of that size would have a crew and somebody booking their flights for them and a tour manager and all of these things, but this band have come from a scene where that's not a thing, and yet they have clearly surpassed that.
It's that's one thing. It's like they're clearly out their depth, whatever
professionally,
whatever spin you want to put in that.
Yeah.
But also there's a level of like basic decency for all the people that paid that money to go.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like they're turning up to a free show or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
that was like they must be getting a full whack of money if it's a 20 quid ticket.
And if it was worth them just not cancelling the show, then they must have been getting a decent amount of money for it as well. Because clearly they didn't do the show out of loyalty to the people that were taking the time to go and see them, or they would have fucking finished the concert regardless of a stupid pedal break. You don't go on tour with just one pedal. So I mean, that's all just bollocks. I remember being stuck in traffic and driving 19 hours to get to a show in Holland and getting there about 20 minutes before we went on stage, still doing the show. Just fucking do it. Deal with it. That's ridiculous, man. I mean, they've got more of this though, right? Because they cancelled the Ozfest meets Notfest show in 2016.
They do have a bit of a history of just cancelling tours and all that. I think they were supposed to play in Britain before, and they cancelled that tour as well. I think it was before that one. Am I right there, Dave?
Yeah, I think that was in like 2013 or 2014 they cancelled the tour, and because I think they were, I can't remember where they were supposed to be, but they were supposed to be playing Glasgow that time, and then their 2016 tour, European tour,
they just the Classic Grand.
Yeah, Classic Grand cancelled that.
This is kind of good because now I don't feel so bad about what I've got to say about the album.
I think they're one of these bands which Pitchfork loved Abandon All Life, their second record, and then that got them a lot of acclaim. And then even things like fucking like NME and all that were picking up on them and stuff. They became like a total hipster band like Death Heaven.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I think I first said that to Chris after we'd chosen this, I think, and they kind of totally nailed their genre, and they then went beyond the boundaries of their genre in terms of fandom, and people who were kind of just, dabbled in a bit of every genre, this was their go-to power violence, grindcore band, really fucking heavy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this band musically is the equivalent of a hot sauce challenge. It's something you do or it's something that a lot of people do or listen to kind of giggle and feel like they're toying with something really extreme and be like, oh look, and let everyone else hear how intense the music they're listening to is. But if this is your reference point for grindcore or crust, then you're not particularly invested in the genre or the scene.
Yeah,
and I feel like Nails are as big as they are because so many people wanted to bandy about that they had such extreme and interesting tastes without any real commitment to it. They broke through that by attracting a bunch of like tourists, as far as I can tell, and it reminds me of the hot sauce challenge. It's like, oh yeah, very well done. I'm really impressed that you can take that spicy sauce or listen to that spicy band. Mm-hmm. So what next? And people are like, nothing, I've done it.
Yeah, but I mean, on that though, like, there's a reason why they were the one that broke through, because
I don't see it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think what they do is like they pare down that genre and they just do the basics exceptionally well, and they also brand really well. Mm-hmm. Nails, really good band name, really good logo, black albums, black merch. The production, I think, is really important on it. And I think in 2010, when this record came out, I mean, we'll talk about the discography quickly and then also just about power violence as a genre and, grindcore as a genre. But it's a very easy product to pick up and get into if you are looking for something that offers extreme metal quickly and satisfyingly.
Yeah, they got quite a lot of like crossover metal appeal because of all that. A lot of metalheads started liking this band because they were in these weird places and people were seeing them. And then obviously there was the whole Metal Sucks thing as well, which is I don't know if anyone wants to go into that, but it was
we might as well.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, but like they were often, or they have been accused of being bullies just by the dint of their album title. Every one of us, and Metal Sucks took that and ran with it and created this mad article, which then got them even more acclaim.
They got accused of that based on their album title.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that's exactly.
Metal Sucks ever reviewed a Cannibal Corpse?
No, but he said that they were being specifically elitist.
Fuck off.
And he said that Todd Jones was like a fake macho sort of elitist guy.
He seems like a rocket, but I mean, there's far stronger criticisms to level at them than their album title makes them inherently elitist.
That's
I mean, the fact that it should be impossible for an album under 14 minutes to be boring, but they managed to make it. That's a far better criticism of Nails than the fucking title.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure about that either. But that's one of the reasons why that's one of the things that also got them crossover appeal was stuff like that. And then it took him 3 years to respond to that, which is also insane. I think the guy lives in his own little bubble. But yeah, he does come across as being a very, shall we say, blunt person. Seems to be quite a reclusive kind of guy.
Sometimes that's okay though, if you're blunt or, in that Steve Albini way where you don't have any real reverence for the scene or the trappings of the music industry and you don't suffer fools gladly. I'm totally on board with that. But, that's different from walking off stage to a full room who've just paid through the nose to watch your band for 18 minutes and then storming away in a huff and leaving it and saying we're never coming back here again. Like they did anything wrong. Like the audience weren't any way to blame apart from turning up in their droves to see you. I mean, that is so fucking bratty. I mean, that is very bratty, that's a different kind of what's the word? It's a different kind of churlish from the likes of Albini or that who I can get theirs. They're like, I'm just a guy playing music. Fuck off with all your other bullshit extraneous music industry scenester shit. That's fine. I mean, that's not what you guys are describing. That
well, he does quite a lot of that as well. If you see some of his interviews, like with Noisy and all that, like the video ones, he does come across as being quite like that. But he is. It does appear. I mean, he'll probably listen to this podcast. He likes to listen. We've seen people talk about his band negatively. He likes to fucking take them to task. If you know,
Chris, you're into Chris Cusack of Number
dropping straight into my DMs, Todd.
Yeah, he's actually fought with like magazines and journalists on Twitter before when they've mentioned bad things about the band that he's either in or.
So here's a weird thing as well, right? Because I'm in a kind of strange position here because I'm friendly with Kurt Ballou and Kurt has worked with these guys on 3 albums. Kurt's done a fucking amazing job on 3 albums with these guys. There's no contention there whatsoever. They sound great. So I can only assume that on a personal level Kurt doesn't tend to work with wankers. But the behaviour describing is shite power.
I was reading on Reddit, a few people were saying that their bands had opened for Nails and all that, and apparently he's a fucking lovely guy.
No, well, there you go, man. But
So-
he should fucking hang his head in shame for that Glasgow fiasco.
Hey, everybody does a shite thing once in a while. That's just infamous because we were there.
Yeah. I'm sure he's losing absolutely no sleep over it.
Yeah, he might well be a lovely guy.
He knows where to send your £25 and your £20 there.
Well, yeah, I know. But
And he knows where to send the DMs as well.
I was going to tell you about the evening that night started, which I think I've gone into before. But
You've touched on it, but you haven't actually given us the full.
I feel like I should set this to some kind of cheeky music.
you might have to censor some of
Benny
this
Hill
out.
tune.
Thankfully, I work for somebody who won't care about some of the legal implications of this podcast. But hopefully, my parents aren't listening. But you can maybe censor some of this out.
Todd will probably send it to your parents just to
Yeah, exactly. Do you know? No, there's a photo of me wearing a Nails t-shirt doing a gay Gordon with my mum. So there you go. That's
the most weird thing I can.
my mum.
if you're not from Scotland, that sounds like a terribly lurid sentence.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, a folk dance. But yeah, so I feel like if this gig wasn't cancelled, this night wouldn't have happened. So I owe Nails, and I'm glad.
Sliding doors.
Yeah, totally.
Sliding nails.
Like if it carried on for another half hour, I would probably have gone, oh, that was a good night, I'm going to go home.
Do they even have the material to carry on for
Well,
another?
yeah, probably not. That was a good night, I'm going to go home, because it was on a Friday night after work, and I'd met my good cousin Ian, and we'd got to this gig.
Top lad.
And then, so obviously this gig finished at like 9:20 or something like that. And so we were like,
crazy.
what are we going to do? So we ended up going back to his flat, and we smoked some of the Jamaican ganja.
Specifically Jamaican.
Yeah, well,
The stickiest icky.
and, I'm not one that smokes a huge amount of weed. So
I can vouch for
got
that.
tremendously high. And then after a couple of hours, we decided to go down to a pub and met another lovely guy, Marco.
Oh, Big
Marco, and we
fella.
then decided we got pissed in the pub for an hour until the doors closed. Then doors closed, we left the pub. I'm still pretty high and I'm a bit pissed now. And then we can hear like some sort of very loud band coming from an open window, and seems to be a band playing in a living room of a flat above the pub, and the close door is open. So Ian and I just decide to go up, and we go in, and there's like a huge flat party, and some sort of English indie band are playing in the living room to like 60 or 70 students. They play for like 10 minutes and then finish, and then somehow we're handed the aux cable and me and Ian ended up DJing really dank hip hop for like 40 minutes in that flat party to 70 random 19-year-olds, and then by the end of it we're like, right, we should go because this is weird. So Ian then goes home, and I decide to try and walk home to my new flat that I've just moved into in the south side. It's fairly cold because it was winter time, I think.
Yeah, it was in December.
So
It's a bit of a
but I was
trek.
like, right, I'll see how big this trek is. I've just moved into this really nice flat with some very middle class new flatmates.
That was a beautiful flat. It was,
Yeah, absolutely.
Such a beautiful flat.
And I think this is like my third night in it, so it's like
a hint of the David Lynch to it.
Aye, totally.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So I decided to walk home. I went into town first, and by that time it was about 2 a.m. and I stopped off in Block.
Been there.
And then my friends Emily and Rachel were doing their DJ night in there, and they were fucking pissed as fuck. So I ended up DJing for them while they just danced because they were so fucked. And then some guy ended up hanging around with us, and it turns out he was a drug dealer. So then we went back to somebody's flat, ended up listening to Deftones until like 6:30 in the morning while this guy is laying out loads and loads of Colombian marching powder, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. Then at 6:45 he goes, oh, does anybody want to go to a rave? And I'm like, well, it's 6:45. And he's like, yeah, it's just started. I'm like, okay. So we went to a warehouse in Tradeston.
I know exactly what you mean,
yeah, it's called Checkmate. It's no longer there, it's been shut down.
Yeah.
But we were there from got there at 7. Fucking 400 people absolutely fleeing, completely illegal, But
can I just say, in
good
terms
techno.
of like an advert for Glasgow, the people listening to this abroad are like, Glasgow's fucking great.
Well, yeah, no, it fucking is. And then
Got the Glasgow Devil Show again.
the problem is, I mean, by that time I was fucked. And then at like 8:30, somebody comes up to me and gives me something up my nose, and I'm like, oh, all right, okay. And then the lights go up, and it turns out it was ketamine. And I'm like, oh, that's a terrible idea.
And then Dave's lights go down.
And I have to then walk home it's 8:30 in the daylight on a Saturday morning. I then go out. I've just taken ketamine for the first time in my life. I vomit in front of a bus stop of people waiting to go to work. I then get home at 9 a.m. to my new flatmates who are all up having breakfast, and this is my third night there, and they're like, holy fuck, who is this guy that we've invited into our home? I then get to bed, and then I get a text from my now fiance Amy, but at that time it was our 4th date, and she said, hey, I'm just getting on the train, are you ready? And I totally forgot that we were supposed to be spending the day hanging out, and she was going to be there in an hour, and I hadn't gone to bed yet.
I'm not ready.
I was like, things went awry last night.
Somewhere there's an Adam Sandler film in here.
So I feel like I need to thank Todd for that night, because if he'd played an extra 20 minutes, I'd probably have gone home.
If it wasn't for your petulance and Kurt's shoddy workmanship, David might never have had that anecdote.
I'd never have tried ketamine. So there you go. That story was probably longer than this record anyway, so carry on.
It probably was, actually.
and better.
Yeah, well.
Okay, well, I guess we should talk about this band a wee bit.
Yeah.
Before we get into specifics of the album or albums, I do think they sound amazing. They've worked exclusively with Balu in their albums, as far as I can tell. What I don't think sounds exclusively amazing, and I'll go into a bit more depth, is the mastering on their albums. The first album was mastered by Alan Duché in New York, and the sound is great. What distinguishes it from the second album, which was mastered, the second and third, in fact, were mastered by a guy called Brad Boatwright, who, I don't know much about Brad Boatwright. I looked a wee bit into his history. He's done a lot of stuff, including things like High on Fire. There is a lot more production, and there's a lot more of an attempt to sound heavy on the second and third albums rather than just sounding heavy on this first album. And I think it's trying too hard. I think it's almost at times borders on that sort of strap-in young lad thing of deliberately producing a record so it sounds obscenely saturated in OTT, especially the third one, where the vocal effects become a real feature. The second one I thought was really dark. I'm not sold on what Boatwright did with the mastering in it. I think Duché's finish is much better. And the reason I feel that is because in my experience of crust and grindcore and D-beat and all this kind of stuff, I associate it with venues like the 13th Note in Glasgow. Now, if you're from Glasgow, you know what that is. It's a very dank, unfussy basement venue, but the shows were really in your face, really intense. You used to get a lot of stuff off the European underground scene, a lot of stuff from Germany coming over. Really, really heavy shows, but really, the kind of bands that had been on tour for 13 weeks and hadn't washed in like 10 days. When I listen to crust and grindcore, it's a very organic sound of music. It's very authentic, even all the way back to Napalm Death. It's sort of lefty and very true. It's just very real life. It's not got the production of metal, and I think when you try to produce it like metal, it really loses some part of its authenticity, which I think is what me personally I associate it with, and that's what I see in the second and especially the third albums. It gets almost a metal production.
It totally does, yeah.
It's like it reminds me of the really early 2000s Nosm, like Human 2.0, that kind of thing. Where they were overproducing stuff and it became cold and quite distant. This album, I do think, is the best of the stuff I heard, partly for its brevity, which does kind of work, but also because it sounds like an actual band. It sounds like a heavy live band.
It's really raw.
Yeah, and I think that's just for me, and maybe I'm the exception here, but that's what I associate with this kind of music. I associate crust and grind, no matter how heavy it gets, as being a very authentic thing, and I feel that authenticity dissipates with the later records as the production gets a little bit fussier and more heavy-handed in its studio-ness, if you know what I mean. That's just my opinion. That's not talking about the songs. I'm sure we'll go into the songs, but that's one of the main criticisms I would level at the later parts of the catalogue. I think as a band, I don't know how much of an influence they've taken from Converge. Obviously, it's got Ballou's production on it, so certain moments in it really do sound like Converge.
Absolutely, yeah.
What it really comes across as to me is, if you take an album like No Heroes, this has all the energy and violence of a song like Vengeance. Minus all the charisma and the artistry and the scope of a track like Plagues. It's like a very narrow window on a much better band. So it's taken these elements and this sound from Converge at their most furious and feral, but then it's just dispensed with all the other stuff. And for me, you just end up feeling shortchanged. I keep waiting for it to do something different. The only bit in this album that really stood out for me was when it sounded like a completely different band, when it sounded like Entombed. And as a result, I'm like, okay, there's thousands of bands doing this. I really don't hear anything special in these songs, and it made me just want to fucking switch it off and put on No Heroes.
I see. It's interesting that you say that. For me, I think what I like about them is I know exactly what I'm going to get. And maybe I am coming to this as a genre tourist, because I've never quite got powerviolence and DB and that, you know, that sort of the more hardcore punk. Because, you know, I come at this as a metalhead.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really fucking enjoy the absolute over beefed, you know, production on the last couple of records. It's like a really simple fucking cheeseburger. You know, I am a total foodie and I love posh food and all these things and, you know, whatever. But sometimes you just want a greasy cheeseburger with cheese and a burger, maybe some ketchup and some pickle, and that's it, you know, and it flops in your hand and you know exactly what you're going to get. And
you sound like a vegan pining for the past, son.
Well, no, I know, I do. But, you know, it's like, it's easy, but it's exactly what you want. Nails don't pretend to be fucking progressive. They're not, you know, they don't want to be Converge in trying out, you know, 10-minute long post-metal songs or whatever.
Oh, no,
they
clearly
just are doing power violence, and they're doing it with as beefy as production as possible, and they've got fucking I think they've got riffs coming out of their arse. They've got I think what they do is they just do the simple things brilliantly. And
the music isn't particularly simple though in terms of just playing.
No, but I think that's kind of the beauty of it for me, and that's like, there's a reason why this record came out and it made a splash within the genre, and then they became the go-to band for people, you know, looking at this. Bands have been doing this for a long time, but what they did was they stripped back any extraneous parts. Like, I've seen bands like, you know, like Magruder Grind and stuff like that, and they're just not as satisfying, but because they're not as simple at what they do. For this type of music, I don't
see if I was being really generous and trying to find something that made sense of the whole scenario, such as the fact that they broke out and even elements of the behaviour live. It reminds me in small ways of Nirvana, where you had in amongst those massive crowds. Now, I mean, I know the Cat House isn't a massive crowd, but for this style of music, it's a fairly massive crowd. Mm-hmm. In amongst that crowd, you've got maybe a sort of 20% of authentic crust and grind fans, people that are really into the genre, people that have gone to see any number of bands and are not swayed by the fact that fucking NME is talking about this group. They're just into this style of music. Mm-hmm. And perhaps the band are a little bit jaded by the fact that they now have all these fucking tourists in the audience that, if I was being generous and trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, I would say maybe that is sapping a little bit their enthusiasm for some of these shows, because they feel like they're talking to people who see them as a novelty rather than as a serious musical proposition. Mm-hmm. So that would be me trying to look on, because I think that's a plausible narrative. I don't know if it's true. I'm speculating.
Well, I think that's why you write a record called You'll Never Be One of Us. That's exactly what you do.
Yeah, possibly. That's maybe another corroborating bit of evidence to that, yeah.
I agree. Like, in terms of production, I can totally see why they've got a lot of metal crossover, because Abandon All Life and You'll Never Be One of Us are both a lot more metal sounding records. I like the production on those records.
By the way, it's not the production I'm criticising on them. I think it's the mastering on them that I don't particularly like. I just
a bit smashed almost.
Well, I certainly think the second album's dark. If you play it back to back with this one, there's some high end issues that it just becomes quite, I don't know, it's quite stifled. And the third one I just think sounds it's just been pushed too hard. It's tried to make everything sound heavier, and it's like, fuck man, this band already sounds heavy. You don't have to try and make them sound heavier.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of like you're over egging the pudding a wee bit at that point. So it's not the production that I think the tones are fucking superb. It's that kind of Balu wall of concrete thing that he does, or like sometimes it sounds like a barrage of like dented bin lids, that kind of high mid sort of crunchy clank. Other times it's like a fucking avalanche of small rocks. You know, you get this really brittle top mid, high mid thing that he does on all across the instruments, and it's great. It's really fucking harsh. You can tell there's something about the mastering of those other two albums that doesn't sit with me.
I think so I came to this band through crust. I'm obviously a hardcore punk kind of guy, guy, kind of hardcore punk, so I approached them in that kind of sense. I don't really see them as a metal band like you do, Dave, but I came to them through Trap Them. Who Kurt Ballou had worked a little bit with, and through All Pigs Must Die, who also Kurt Ballou had worked quite a lot with, and Ben Collard used to play drums, or kind of does play drums for them, and he kind of played drums for Trap Them for a little bit as well. So for me, this was like the heavier end of crust, which is kind of what powerviolence is, right?
Yeah, because it does definitely cross into metal at points. There's definitely a deathy part, and like I said, the entombed moments and stuff like that are absolutely. Definitely it.
There's bits of thrash on some of the songs as well. There's massive Slayer riffs. They've even got some of those like kind of weird atonal Slayery solos in some places as well in some of their songs.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's a lot in there.
The anti-solo thing.
Yeah. So I came at it from that kind of point of view, and that's the reason why I like this record the most, Unsilent Death, is because it is not as fussy, it is more punk.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I feel like, from what I've heard, because this does sound the most authentically like a band.
I suppose it was interesting. I'm fairly sure that you were swaying between this and All Pigs Must Die.
Yeah.
So why did you choose this? Because to me, I think Chris might have liked All Pigs Must Die more.
I did.
They seem more
I listened
authentic.
to both, and I got a wee bit more out of them. Yeah.
But for me, I'm happy to go with Nails.
Yeah, well, for me, All Pigs Must Die are a band that I return to more than Nails. But I was thinking about, if we're going to bring more people into this kind of music, you kind of want to go with some of the heavier hitters, right? And Nails are one of them.
That's the thing, though. I think that there's an interesting element that All Pigs Must Die don't have that freakish breakout that these guys do. And I think that's just, you can't have a discussion about Nails without sort of factoring that into the conversation, because it is unusual that they managed to make a step up, and that magazines like NME and stuff gave them time of day when they would normally just certainly in the older days ridiculed this kind of music off the cuff. So I think that aspect of Nails is quite intriguing.
There's more to talk about with this band than there is All Pigs Must Die as well, in terms of like we've just discussed, like you just said, Chris, like the breakout moment, you know, the petulant behaviour. I think for my money, All Pigs Must Die are a band I listen to more but I still like Nails a lot.
Yeah.
I don't listen to them as much, especially after the Glasgow show. I don't listen to them too much after that, because that was like, that just left a sour taste in my mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Absolutely, man.
See, for no, I mean, obviously,
it's weird when a band gets like a default reputation which is somewhat negative, and before even listening to Nails, I just remember people having a negative impression of them as a result of that experience.
Yeah.
And so without my coming to this was, this is that band that a lot of people are fucking annoyed about. I didn't know why they were annoyed about them. I just know that there's a general sense of fucking Nails, man.
But I mean, you wouldn't want everybody to love your band if you were Nails. Like, that's kind of part of it.
Yeah, maybe being rude, you know.
But like, what's interesting
is real punk.
Like,
Maybe.
Like this sort of stuff, and like that whole Boss Metal Zone like vibe, and the Kurt Ballou stuff, that a lot of bands have been doing that since,
by the way,
sort of late 2008.
Let's not make the mistake of thinking he just uses Metal Zones. He has got some of the fucking coolest amps I've ever seen in my life.
Totally.
Some of those vintage trainers and Bad Cats and stuff like that, man. Absolutely amazing gear.
Yeah. HM 2 sound is integral to this record, though, just like it was integral to Black Breath as well, who Kurt Ballou worked with. And Black Breath are a band that I also almost picked for this, because I like Black Breath more than both of those bands. A bit of history on them. They came out of a punk band called Shook Ones, so they're kind of like some of the guys for Shook Ones, who are like a sort of skate punk band who decided they wanted to make in like basically old school black metal, death metal stuff, and just did it, and it's really fun. It is properly metal, but it's like done with a massive tongue in cheek.
So it's interesting. Really, so Dave made mention to some of the kind of killer riffs, and you've made mention to kind of elements of the thrash and the metal and the hardcore. So can we go into the tracks, because I think the tracks actually fall into categories at certain points, and they kind of highlight these moments.
But do you want to go over the records afterwards, beforehand, just a little bit, because there's also moments.
Yeah, I suppose we should quickly go over the other two records. So Abandon All Life, that was the one that got picked up by Pitchfork.
Yeah, it was the hipster moment really kind of started.
But I mean, in Exodus, it doesn't get much heavier than that.
Yeah,
that is a band. That's a heavy fucking band. I've got a playlist of heavy crossover punk metal stuff, and that's like bands like Young and in the Way, Fuck the Facts, Black Breath, Trap Them, Full of Hell, Enabler, Cult Leader, and like Nails is in that, and it stands fucking proud when that comes on. They are just as powerful as any of the rest.
It's also Tyrant, which is again like a classic kind of prime, kind of really quick Nails cut. It's one of the things that I don't like so much about Abandon All Life is the rougher edges have been shown off, like kind of shown off a little bit. You know, shown off a little bit even. It just kind of feels. It's a lot leaner and a lot meaner, but I don't necessarily think that works on this record as much. But Tyrant's a really good song. Open Wound has got like a big horrible riff, like a big Converge style horrible riff, which is why I like that song so much. It's also longer than anything on Unsilent Death, and it's only like 3 minutes long, and it's also got the last song, Some Queek. I don't even know how to say that, but it's just a great closing song. And when we were talking about closing tracks, that was one of the ones that I picked when we did that mixtape.
Oh yeah,
because it sounds really medieval. So there are highlights on that record for sure. And then the next one after that is You'll Never Be One of Us, which came out in 2016, and that was now Pitchfork, now Rolling Stone, now the AV Club, now everyone's talking about your band. Everyone's listening to this record and like giving it all the praise because it's the heaviest thing they've ever heard, when it's pretty fucking heavy, but I don't think I'd put it up there with the heaviest things I've ever heard. But again, like you were saying, the sort of whole kind of general vibe of it is kind of pushed a bit too much.
Well, it's interesting that is the sort of currency that was working for them. Oh, it's the heaviest thing I've ever heard. That freakish value was getting them places in those other publications that they normally wouldn't get into. So it seems like they leaned into that. They were like, oh yeah, we're getting more traction the heavier we sound, so let's make this album sound even more ridiculously heavy than the last one sounded. It's like, do you need to?
Yeah, you get to diminishing returns at some point as well, because for some reason it's the exact same team behind that the first record beforehand, but it sounds weaker despite the fact that it sounds heavier at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's just because the studio is starting to, you're hearing too much of the studio process, you're not hearing enough of the band.
But it does have friend to all, which is great. Some of the riffs on that are really dynamite, and the vocals pretty cool too. Life's a Death Sentence is like proper boss HM2. That black metal style thing going on all over the place, and it's got an awesome sort of D-beat hardcore ending. The thing I love it most about is that sometimes I just chuck out a D-beat, massive hardcore punk bit in the middle of this filthy riff, which is one of the reasons why I like them so much. It's got Violence is Forever, which has got a big groove. And then the last song is They Come Crawling Back, which is like 8 minutes long. It's one of the longest things I've ever written, and it's just all the ideas shoved into one tune that they've ever done.
They should just have released that song as an album.
They probably could have got away with that as well. But these two albums are really good in my opinion, but they're not as good as Unsilent Death, which we shall now talk about, I suppose.
Yeah, go for it. So, I mean, it's
almost a blast beat.
Yeah, I'm down with that. All records should open with a blast beat.
You're in it. There's
disappointed that Kate Bush never opened with a blast beat.
Can you imagine that? That'd be really
Still
good.
time.
Yeah. There's one of the things that I like about this band, the drummer's excellent. He's really good at switching between, hardcore and thrash, and doing that kind of death blast thing.
I think that certainly it is a blast beat. It is loud. It does convey that it's angry. The riffing on it is so indistinct.
On the record, the guitars are not as distinct as on this one.
It's just I'm reluctant to even call it a riff, because there is no distinct hummable thing there. I don't mean hummable in the sense of the Eagles, but I just mean there is just no there is just noise. I sound like my fucking parents here, but the riff is not really pushing through in that one at all. So I'm reluctant to say it's got such a fucking killer riff, because it doesn't. It's a fucking blast beat racket, which is fine if you're doing a blast beat racket, but it is just a blast beat racket.
And then you've got Scum Will Rise, which just starts off with that mighty bass tone.
It starts the mighty bass tones. This starts like it's going to be a better song. It sort of has a riff, it sort of has a beat down,
getting off what it is.
It's a little bit by the numbers.
Totally, but it's the first record territory, and I can give it that. Like, I enjoy that. These guys are a band with one emotion and kind of one setting,
I totally get that. I'm just mindful of, we're always viewing this through the lens of how did they become this novelty in the indie press. How did they get plucked from the midst of all these other grindcore bands that have equally brutal blast beats and indistinguishable riffs and often better moments. There
are more interesting bands for sure. Like Full of Hell are a great example of a band that are significantly more interesting than Nails.
Very much more. I mean, they've done a split together, right?
Yeah.
But But Full of Hell have done like splits with
The Body.
like The Body and fucking what's his name? The Japanese noise guy.
Mersborough.
Yeah.
I saw The Body at the end of last year. It was so unremarkable.
I've heard they used to be like really, really loud and heavy.
That was the thing. It was just like, this is obscenely loud. It's like, very good, but it was fucking boring.
Next on this record is Your God, which has got quite a good main riff. It's got
I couldn't agree
swingy thing.
less, man. It's got,
I quite liked it.
It's got like a
I
four.
like it.
This is like, it's got this like 4-chord fucking thing that is just, it's like a pop punk 4-chord thing that's played inexplicably fast and heavy. I really don't get the appeal of those 4 chords. They're just so so high school, man. There's nothing to them.
I'm still using them, man. It's also got a D beat, which as soon as I hear it, I'm a sucker for a D beat, man. As soon as I hear a D beat, I'm like, I'm probably going to like that song.
I think they know that.
Yeah, probably do. Suffering Soul's got some really good drumming as well.
So this is a bit more hardcore. This
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
It's actually good. There's a slower riff around 50 seconds, which sounds like Machine Head to me.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think it's actually more deathy. I think this has a deathier riff in what you might call the chorus.
As in like the band Death?
Or
is
no,
the genre Death?
as in like death metal, yeah. I think the lyrics, what I could make out in this one, sound fucking stupid.
All the lyrics are stupid in all the songs.
The tones are undeniably amazing, including their little feedback overdubs that they've done to try and make the album sound heavier. Like,
They've got sometimes do that. There's a lot of bands that do it now. It's like the kind of harmonic sweep thing. It's like, do you know the thing I mean? Like the sweeper on the harmonic. Which
yeah, of course. But they also do that kind of thing where you're pressing the pickup and moving it about next to the amp.
Yeah,
but it sounds like an overdub because it's panned differently from the guitar part.
It's probably just cut below, like next door, just like pressing the reverb button. Unsilent Death is the second longest song on the records. The bass tone on this is super fucking filthy in this song.
It's a surprisingly good song.
Yeah, it's got
but
a
mainly
big groove.
It sounds like Entombed.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's also the song with the most structure on the record. It's a more substantial kind of tune.
It's got one of those anti-solos you were talking about.
Yeah, and it does have the feedback thing, which I think is properly minging, but in a good way.
Oh, it's a really harsh frequency.
Yeah.
It's nicer when it happens.
That's my favourite song on this record, easily. And then I think it also happens to be that it comes right in the centre of the record, and it's a slower song, which is a kind of a good pacer from a structural point of view as well.
Oh yeah, it's well
point of view.
Yeah, it's well sequenced.
Traitor is like Converge almost.
That's super amped up hardcore.
Yeah, and then it's got the feedback thing again, but it definitely in a more Converge kind of sense.
I think the slow drop in that one early is pretty good, and I think the song's kind of more varied. It's like almost akin to some of the more kind of gonzo experimental hardcore of the early 2005 sort of period. It's just a little bit more interesting as a result.
You've got I Will Not Follow, which
totally functional.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it's got the kind of weird open hi-hat and snare thing, which they haven't really done, and it sounds kind of makes it sound a bit strange.
I feel like the breakdown in that song, man, you see it coming so far away that before the song even starts, you know that breakdown's coming, man.
I'm still swinging my hair to it though.
Yeah, I think like all these things that you're pointing out is like obvious signposts and things like that. I'm like, yeah, they've got ketchup in the burger. You want ketchup in the burger? You're doing this.
No, I get
exactly
it.
how you want
but
it.
I'm saying they're tropes, and if you're just one of the mass of grindcore bands, then I get it. They're tropes. They're little demarcations of your genre. But what is it about this band that elevated them to prominence? And what I'm trying to point out is that I don't see it. I don't think any of these songs are bad. I just don't think any of these songs are anything special, with the exception maybe of Unsilent Death, which is really good. I'm not really getting the exceptionalism of this group.
I think that's the thing that we just kind of spoke about, didn't it? It's like there are more interesting bands that should be there, that should be in their place. Weekend Naturals are another one of them.
Yeah, great band.
They broke up. So yeah, you're right. I mean, these guys are pretty functional as it goes. They just do heavy bits and all the different kinds of heavy you can imagine.
If you've not grown up around this kind of music, you're super impressed by it, and it's like, oh wow, that's so fucking spicy. And it's, it's kind of like tourism, and I'm just not really sold on that. I'm being a fucking snob, because I went to fucking loads of these gigs growing up and saw some fucking killer bands that never really got elevated, and I still have the records, and I'm struggling to see what it is that sets these guys apart, other than, I don't know, some weird arbitrary hand of fate. I don't get it.
No, I think
the tones are amazing. I think a big part of it is that Kurt made a fucking incredible job of the recordings.
It's very satisfying as a whole to me. Like, and that's like, if I just need 20 minutes or less than 20 minutes
play twice
of really fucking heavy music, then this is kind of my go-to, because I know I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to go, oh, yeah, it's not an album, or they're not a band that you study or think about, which is maybe a weird thing to do with this, with what we do with this podcast. Maybe we thought too hard about it, but like, as a go-to satisfying record, there's none more.
I get it. They're a primal scream.
Yeah,
they're not like any sort of particularly high-end commentary.
But I think they're a really good gate, or a really good pathway to other, grindcore heavy bands like this, if you're wanting to get into heavy music.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's a lot of Pig Destroyer fans that have a lot of time of day for a band like Nails, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
Saying that as one of the guys that nominated Pig Destroyer.
Yeah, but I like Pig Destroyer a lot as well, but I think that, you're looking for different meals, really. Like the cheeseburger analogy was perfect. There's something satisfying and dirty about it, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why they got so big, is it's got that directness, which our bands like Pig Destroyer kind of don't really have. They are quite heavy, but they've got a little bit of arson around as well, which I like. It gives a bit more dynamicism. Do you know what I mean? Makes them more dynamic.
Right in, let Mark know.
Yeah.
So track 8, No Servant, sounds like it's
a hardcore punk song, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like an album track to me. It's got that kind of widdly, deathy kind of guitar.
Look at the noise, slower.
It's not bad, but it's just sort of in there.
Scapegoat's a grind song with a big death metal blast at the start. It's got a nice snare fill, which leads into the kind of Slayer ending, the kind of Slayer thrash metal ending, and then it ends with Depths, but there's the longest song on the record, and that's not saying very much because it's still 3.5 minutes long. But This got a cool bass break, which lets the bass kind of breathe a little bit, and you can hear that again, that really nasty tone, which is one of the things that brings me to this record quite a lot.
Fuck, I love a wee harmonic pinch in this one, don't they?
Yeah, totally,
Holy
man.
shit.
That's what I was saying. Like that whole harmonic sweep thing is one of those things. That's actually the end of it is kind of really slow. It reminds me of something off Axe to Fall. It's got that slower converged right vibe. But yeah, you're right, the big pinch is more kind of thrash. It's like, can it be a pinch? Can it be a pinch?
And that's
Anyway.
it. 13 minutes 52 seconds later, it's over.
Yeah, we've spent more time talking about the record than
Probably
than
spent
it exists.
4 or 5
We've
times.
spent more time talking about it than their entire discography. So, but yeah, I mean, fuck it. I have tried to get into crust and TB and stuff like that, but maybe as a metalhead, I don't know, it's just never satisfied me. Whereas this truly does. I think
a big part of that is probably production, man. Because that's
Yeah.
the one thing about metal.
no, but like even then, like even on like their later records, they find like breakdowns and just like chugs that I haven't heard before. Like there's always a new bit that I've gone, oh, I've never heard anything that heavy before.
I totally take that on board, but I would suggest that those breakdowns and chugs and such like are all out there on other records, but because those records weren't produced in a way that you wanted to listen to them and go through them to their full extent, it's just like a lot of the crust and grind stuff that comes out is very lo-fi. That kind of era of like very basic 7 inches that, and you know, coming out of Europe in like blank sleeves, that kind of stuff. There are some really amazing and original ideas there, but if you're put off by the tone right from the start, I mean, I've got stuff down there by bands like Mine, which is just so lo-fi in its recording that you don't really, if you're not into that lo-fi-ness, then you just don't really go anywhere with it.
That's fine. If I want to spend time and go deep in on grindcore, then I'm sure I would actually eventually get into it. But as somebody that I'm quite happy, I fucking genre hop all over the place. And if I just want some quick fucking grindcore, Nails are the go-to band for me.
See, and maybe that's what I'm saying, Mark. You're saying, oh, this could be a gateway band for people getting into other bands, but unfortunately there's also the opportunity for them to be a band that people are like, oh, I want a grindcore band, I'll just take Nails and that's it, and I won't go any further. And yet there are
But they're fulfilling a need because...
But what I'm saying is they're fulfilling a need, but there's better bands out there that you're not going for because you've stopped at this station and you're not going any further. And that's kind of counterproductive in my opinion.
No, but I mean, Nails have... I think I got into Nails and then got into more stuff from them. Yeah, I don't know. I'd say yes because I think they're interesting.
I like them a lot,
and I like this
even
record.
though my opinion is severely dented.
I wonder what Todd thinks.
I wonder what
Todd.
Todd thinks.
What do you think?
Hey, Todd,
Should we vote for you?
Yeah, if you're listening, tell us what your favourite Nails record is.
Just go on the Facebook, Todd, and vote yes, it should go into discography, which is what these guys want everyone else to do.
Get all your friends to do it as well.
Facebook.com/unsuggedpod and say yes or no. Alright, so it's time. Oh, excuse me. Look at the hiccups.
It's time to Nexus.
It's time to Nexus.
Nails.
Mark.
Nails to the Unabomber.
Yeah, who chose the Unabomber?
Tom Russell.
Tom Russell.
This is the first time we're seeing Nexus tonight. Will it be the last? What do they have in store for us? Not good for
Why am I here? You're in the Nexus. This is the Nexus. For you, this is what you wanted.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. All right, Mark, it's you go. It's your record.
So Nails' last album, You'll Never Be One of Us, was released on Nuclear Blast Records. There's been so many bands in Nuclear Blast Records, loads and loads of bands. One is a death metal band called Macabre.
It's the story of dead body. And it's a girl having to something or living through its crowd. That they wouldn't think about.
They're an extreme metal band from Chicago. They've been going since the 80s. They do this kind of like a blend of like death metal and grindcore, and they also chuck in nursery rhymes as well, but that's not the strangest thing. Their whole gimmick is that all their songs are about a serial killer or a mass murderer, and they do a lot of songs that have got like quite explicit and gory humour in them as well. And apparently some of the members even have met some serial killers in prison and are actually friends with them and stuff like that, which is kind of weird. Anyway, they released an EP in 1999 called the Unabomber, which also features songs about Jeffrey Dahmer, David Bohm, Ed Gein, H.H. Holmes, and the list goes on. So yeah, direct link.
I don't see the link.
Christopher?
Do you know the Unabomber met Timothy McVeigh when he was in jail?
Yes, apparently they were friends.
Quite a gang. Right, so Nails dropped out of Ozfest meets Notfest in 2016. As part of that show, they were due to share a stage with the band Municipal Waste. Municipal Waste were headlining the stage that Nails were on. In 2016, Municipal Waste also released a controversial line of merchandise which featured Donald Trump blowing his own brains out in graphic detail. I mean, obviously Donald Trump to Bernie Sanders is clearly an easy link, given that they're possibly going to be the main contenders for the American presidential election. But it just so happens that All Shall Perish also released a line of merchandise which had Bernie Sanders in a tank smoking a giant spliff driving over Donald Trump. But yeah, Donald Trump to Bernie Sanders is an easy link. So, and this is where it gets good, and David, this one's for you, bud. Bernie Sanders in 1987 released an album called We Shall Overcome.
With a God at every door, and the vaults are stuffed with silver that the workers sweated for.
Of course he did.
It's a cassette album. It was very limited edition. It was re-released in 2014, actually. It's kind of a combination of folk and spoken word.
As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that...
On that album, the backing vocals are credited to David Weaver.
What, really? I was only 1 year old. Fuck. Still I knew.
Absolutely
Still I knew Big Bernie was there.
I fucking nearly fell off my seat when I saw that, man, honestly. But yeah, so that record actually was re-released in 2014 after, I think it was Jimmy Fallon on the Tonight Show broadcast it on the programme, and he's like, oh, this is real. People didn't believe it. On August 14th, 2017, Jimmy Fallon interviewed Susan Sarandon, and it was immediately after the Charlottesville killings of the white supremacy rally when Heather Heyer lost her life in the car. I wouldn't say car accident, in the murder. Yeah. Susan Sarandon, not many people know this, was the voice of Tylenol. The headache treatment for years and years and years. Wow. In American TV commercials. In September 1982 in Chicago, 7 people died after a whole bunch of bottles of Tylenol were taken off the shelf and pills of cyanide were put in them, and then they were put back on the shelf. And the 7 people that died included a 12-year-old girl. That was the incident that I think led in America to medical bottles being sealed. But yeah, that was 1982. In 2011, the FBI specifically approached the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, to get his DNA because they suspected him of having been the person that put the cyanide in those bottles, because it happened near his parents' home, in a shop near his parents' home, and he'd already been found guilty of poisoning a whole bunch of animals and stuff in the years leading up to that.
Interesting. Did they ever...
No, I don't believe so.
But I mean, he always went for people that had a specific thing. It was never random with him in terms of his human targets.
He liked people with like a woodlands themed, a kind of nature themed name, and 2 of the people that died, I think, had wood something in their name. So it was kind of why the FBI thought it was consistent with some of his earlier crimes. Okay, so Nails. In 2016, they had a touring guitarist called Phil Segrosso.
I almost went down this route.
Phil Segrosso, he is in As I Lay Dying, who
a lovely band with a charming lead singer.
Yeah, I think they're definitely cancelled.
Apparently not.
Oh, really?
Well, they released an album last year and they still tour a lot. So.
Oh, well. Anyway, Phil Segrosso, at one point, he was filling in for Jim Root in Slipknot as a touring guitarist because he was injured, I think. Slipknot, of course, frontman is Corey Taylor, who is also in that shite band, what they called Stone Sour.
He's also in another shite band called
Slipknot.
Hey, I won't be having that. But Corey Taylor seems like a very nice, intelligent guy, and
really
just
is that the vibe you get of him?
Hey, 2 years ago he appeared on QI, the British quiz show hosted by Sandy Tossig.
I don't know.
Does it get more wholesome than that?
Man, you should have kept that for a future Nexus. That's amazing.
It's in the Nexus. I'm doing it.
Right, okay.
This is it.
Okay.
So he appeared on QI.
All right. Okay, I'd never heard
there
that.
You are. And he was nice and wholesome. And
wait, the show with Sandy Tossig?
Yes.
The host? Fuck.
Stephen Fry's gone.
Oh man.
Yeah. So QI obviously used to be Stephen Fry, now Sandy Tossig. There have been several attempts to broadcast QI in the United States, but they've never managed to get it going. I think it's like something to do with the cost and blah blah blah. So for some reason it's never actually been shown in the US, even though like it's got a total cult underground following. And at one point US comedian John Hodgman actually appeared as a guest, but in an episode that was never shown. I think they were like trying to use that to get over to the US or something like that. Anyway, that guy John Hodgman, he was in the American version of the. Do you remember the Apple versus PC adverts?
Yeah, it was having Justin Long.
Yeah, early 2000s. In Britain, they used David Mitchell and Webb, the guys from Peep Show.
Was it Simon Webb? Robert Webb.
So like the whole point was like the person that was a PC was a total grey dork, really boring, and then they had a young cool Mac guy. So yeah, John Hodgman was the PC in the Apple PC adverts. Apple Incorporated, the first $1 trillion company, also the first computer that we ever had in my house in 1990. We got them when they were shit.
Do you want a fact about Apple? This probably won't be your Nexus. But Apple will not allow bad guys to use their phones in any film.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Really strange.
Anyway, in 2010, Apple were hit with a triple patent lawsuit and were told they had to pay $625 million for violating patents on several different things. This was all specific to patents owned by a company founded by a Yale University computer science professor. That Yale University computer science professor was David Glertner. David Glertner, he's famously anti-PC. He's many things. He says that the American liberal left is the cause of downfall of society. In 1993, he was sent a mail bomb by Ted Kaczynski and lost him some fingers when he opened it.
It's probably why he's raging.
So there you go. That's your link.
That's really interesting because the eco-fascists really like the writings of the Unabomber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the Unabomber did not like this guy. Anyway, there you go. Right, what are we doing next week, Chris?
We are going to do Pod by the Breeders.
Cool.
The lovely Breeders, and it's a surprisingly interesting record given the backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Will I pick a Nexus out of the top?
Yes, go for it.
Please do. By the way, we did thank you last week for your Nexus suggestions. Please give us some more.
Yeah.
We could always use more. Or I'll put another photograph of Marilyn Manson and
Billy Corgan.
I will find another one.
Somebody put in a used one.
Oh no, you double dumped.
Was that me?
Well, sometimes
somebody put Doug Stanhope back in the tub.
Oh, that wasn't me.
Okay. Fucking hell. Zippy from Rainbow.
Zippy from Rainbow. The 80s childhood character.
Catalyze on Twitter.
Great.
Wow.
So we've got to get from the Breeders to Zippy from Rainbow.
Doesn't actually seem that different tonally, at least.
Yeah, I know. Okay, cool. Great. Well, thanks for listening to our Nails episode that's longer than all of the music Nails have ever recorded.
Mm-hmm. And probably every single live show they've ever played combined as well.
Yeah.
It's just certainly in Glasgow.
Great. Right, I'm
Todd, look forward to your...
You know what
it's Chris that doesn't like you.
You know what to send correspondence. Don't send mail bombs.
Nail bombs. Nails bombs.